Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. Sorry, I'm just going to move up a little bit. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So today is the day. Once a year I do this. I give you my new masterpieces. Basically, they're just my masterpieces. They're not masterpieces in general, because obviously some of the albums that I decided to pass on as masterpieces, some people would take great offense to. But it's my masterpieces, so I can't make them everybody's masterpiece, and nor can you make your masterpieces mine. So basically, these are albums I think are masterpieces. So basically, the credentials for this, or the requirements to get a masterpiece with me, is first they have to have at least three years of listening to get to that stage. So I have to have had them and been listening to them for at least 3 years in order for them to even qualify. They have to be mostly an average listening to of about 8 out of 10. So that means if you take all the songs on the album and you add them all together, you should get an average that's around about an 8 out of 10. The other requirement is that they, of course, have to be rock albums. I don't do masterpieces for any other type of albums, but that's another one of them. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cough in the throat this morning, so hopefully that'll go away. So I had, basically with those credentials in mind, I had 15 albums that I had taken. Well, I had a whole whack of albums, and I narrowed them down to 15 that I think are reasonable expectations that they could all make the masterpiece. And then after having appeared and looked through them all, I picked 6 out. There was a 7th album that I had considered to put on here so that I would have had 7, but after reviewing it a bit, I decided maybe it just needs a little more listening time because I haven't had it for a while. I only got it maybe a year or so ago, so I haven't had it long enough to really kind of, although I did have it as a vinyl album for about 5 or 10 years before or probably about 5 years before I gave all my vinyl collection to my sister. And then I didn't have it for the longest time, and I just got it a year ago. But it's definitely qualifies in just about every category that you could want. Just decided that it will probably go on next year's final considerations, and more than likely it'll get in. It's just that I just felt like I wanted some more familiarity with it. So anyways, I've picked out 6. So 6 albums are going to enter my masterpiece list. I don't have it in front of me, my overall masterpiece list. It's in the other book, but I think this is going to make it's either going to be with 6 editions, it's either going to be, I think it's going to be 61. That'll make 61 masterpiece albums. Generally speaking, most bands, if they get one year, don't generally get it a second year in a row. That's generally how it works with me, but in this case, there is a band that's going to get a second album into the masterpiece collection. So I reviewed the 15 albums. I narrowed it down to about 10. Then I kept whittling it away until I got 7. And then I decided that the 7th album was the one we just talked about. So I have 6. Give them to you in the order in which I decided they should be put in. So the 6th one then would be the album that just got the line in. And this album is well deserving. It's been in my collection for 40 years. It was my first album by this band. It was an album that I liked a lot initially, and then it continues to get airplay, and it hasn't burned out at all. It still gets airplay over the course of time. And I've grown to like some of the lesser songs, and that's what's brought the album to this doorway today, is because I always liked it, but there was 3 or 4 tracks on it that I didn't think were that great, and so therefore I never actually considered it for a masterpiece. It eventually made a level 1, just from over time. But in the last couple of years, I've grown to like just everything on the album. And the band, of course, has grown on me quite a bit. And that may be the reason why it's got to this stage. And that's this album, Fire of Unknown Origin by Blue Oyster Cult. There is another Blue Oyster Cult album that I probably like better, mostly because it's newer to me, but it hasn't got the criteria yet to be selected, and I think this one has a lot of that longevity in there, and that's why I chose to put it in my final 15 considerations, and then ultimately it's making it here. This is a very strong album by this band. So this is Blue Oyster Cult's Fire of Unknown Origin. I like every track on it now. Didn't always like Don't Turn Your Back on Me, but I don't mind it now. It's got to a point where its number has risen, which has given the album, put it into that sector where it belongs, of an 80% or 8 out of 10 or better. Every track on here is good. Fire of Unknown Origin, absolutely killer title track. Burning for You, of course, everybody knows that one. That's the radio song. Veteran of a Psychic Wars from, is that the one that was in heavy metal? I think it was the one that was in heavy metal. Soul Survivor, which has become probably one of my top 2 favorite tracks on here, with Veteran of a Psychic Wars. Those are probably my 2 favorite tracks on the album. Heavy Metal, The Black and Silver. This is kind of their heavy song on the album. This is the one that people, when they think of heavy metal, they think of this song, I think. Vengeance, The Pack. This is a strong song that was a deep cut that I liked before, and it's only gotten stronger. After Dark, another one such track. Joan Crawford, of course, the kind of creepy song about the legendary movie actress, which I think is really good as well. And then Don't Turn Your Back, which is the final track. And it has its points to it. Don't Turn Your Back, I think it got that kind of commercial sound to it that probably could have made it on the charts, but for some reason it never did. But very strong album. That's the first album of the masterpieces today, Blue Oyster Cult's Fire of Unknown Origin. The next one was my first owned album by this guy. Probably should have made this a long time ago, but I never used to do it this way. But now it's definitely got to be here, and this is Security by Peter Gabriel. Now gives Gabriel 3 albums up there. This one deserves to be amongst those 3. Just an absolute killer album. Only has maybe one song on the album that I'm not absolutely crazy about, and that's Family and the Fishing Net. I don't dislike the song. It easily passes. It's just not one of my favorite. The rest of the songs are killer. Rhythm of the Heat, that dark, menacing sound to it. It's such a great opening song for an album. San Jacinto, of course, probably better on the live version than this version, but still really killer here. Just a hauntingly beautiful song, I think. I Have the Touch. I Have the Touch and Kiss of Life, very similar to me. They both are upbeat, kind of quirky, upbeat songs that talk about things that we have in commonality in the world, but we don't really think of them. They're not stuff you think about, but you identify with, I guess is probably the better word. Shock the Monkey, of course, was the big song on the album and was the song that drew me to Peter Gabriel. So this and Peter Gabriel 3's Games Without Frontiers, those were the 2 songs that drew me to Peter Gabriel. This one has a kind of at that time I thought was kind of a new wave-ish sound to it. But really, really killer song. Lay Your Hands on Me, another one of those I Have the Touch, Kiss of Life type songs. Not as much as the other 2. And then Wallflower, which is a little bit different, but definitely a good song to listen to as well. So this is a strong album by Peter Gabriel. I don't really think initially, and he didn't have really any bad albums for me. I haven't got into Up yet, so I can't really say much about it. Or the new one, I/O, or whatever you want to call it. I haven't got into those 2 yet, so I can't really comment on either. However, that album deserves to be in my masterpieces, and thus far it is. This one, long overdue, even in the quietest moment. I kind of knew when I put it on the list that it was going to be one of the albums to get in, but I made it go through the process. So I've had this album since, I'm going to say, since before my daughter was born, and then it got a lot of time play during that time period of her, with the first 5 years of her life, got a little bit of a shutdown for a bit, but it's been consistently taken off the shelf and played over the last decade or so, pretty much regularly. I wouldn't say it is as much now because I have so much other stuff I got to listen to, but prior to this channel, it was getting a regular once a month type play out. Really strong album. Give a Little Bit, of course, is the song that you hear on the radio all the time. Lover Boy. This is a little bit of a different song, but I do like it. Then you got Even in the Quietest Moments. I can't even listen to this song because it makes me cry every time, so I try not to. It reminds me of something that sets me off. Downstream, another really good deep cut. Baba G, of course, another great song. I think it actually got some radio airplay, quite a bit of it too at one point. I don't know if it does anymore. From Now On, another really strong song. And then it ends off with Fool's Overture, which is one of the best ending songs of any of the Supertramp stuff. Really strong album. It's funny that it's all cracked like that on the back because this was a disc that I had taken with me and it got sat on by somebody and it's kind of damaged. So I'm looking to replace not the disc itself, although it's probably in need of, oh no, actually it's good. It's good. It's just the cover just kind of busted up a bit, but still an album well deserving of being here on the playlist. It's probably right there with Breakfast in America for my second favorite Supertramp album. I'm going to actually do a Supertramp album ranking maybe later in the year when I get through a couple more of their newer stuff to me. They're definitely a ranking band that I need to do. So this next one we've done recently as a look back at a classic rock album. And during that, I realized how strong this was because I hadn't been playing it for a bit because I had so much new stuff. But it was one of the regular albums I used to go to with this group, Iron Maiden's Power Slave. There's no weak songs on this album. I like every stuff on here. Now, it doesn't have any of my favorite all-time songs from Iron Maiden, like my top 10 or 15. Maybe Rime of the Ancient Mariner, of course, is probably one of them. But the rest of the songs are just really strong. Like, there's just no weakness here. Flash of the Blade, The Duelist, Back to the Village. These are all good songs. And then you have the opening track, Aces High, and 2 Minutes to Midnight, which is the single from the album. Both really strong stuff. I still like both of them quite a bit. The only thing that kind of maybe kept this down a bit is I find this cover, even though it's much more detailed than a lot of them, I just find it a little bit kind of cartoonish. I'm not sure if that makes sense. It just feels a little cartoonish to me. Not as real as some of their other, not that any of their stuff is really real looking, but this isn't as dark or menacing looking an album as some of their other stuff. But musically wise, I think it rivals The Number of the Beast and Peace of Mind, which is another album that could have been put in the list. I never do masterpiece albums with more than one from a group, so I could have gone either way. I just think this is just a better album all around than Peace of Mind, but absolutely a killer album and deserves to be here. That gives Iron Maiden their second album now in the Masterpiece collection. Next up is an album I've had for a very long time, since the 1990s. I used to play it like constantly. It was in my playlist for a while, and then out and then back in and then out and then back in. It's been in there about 3 or 4 times. It's just such a good album with so many memorable tracks on it. That's Freedom from Neil Young. I mean, other than the big track, which is Rocket in the Free World, I do like both versions, the acoustic version and the heavy version as well. This album isn't all that heavy as far as heavy guitar sounding, but has a lot of really catchy tracks in here. Crime in the City, that's kind of a funny song, but I never could. I always listen to it trying to figure out what he's actually talking about here. I know what he's talking about, but the storyline's kind of jangled. Don't Cry, another great track. Hang On a Limb, another really good track. El Dorado, The Way of Love. The Way of Love is probably one of my favorite tracks on this album. Someday on Broadway, this is kind of I think this is a cover track, but I could be wrong. Wrecking Ball, not like the Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball either. No More, Too Far Gone. Rockin' in the Free World, which is the, I think the last track is the acoustic version of the song, or maybe I got them backwards. One of them's acoustic, one of them, the opening one, I think is the heavier one, but I could be wrong. Can't remember which one is which. Yeah, this has some of my favorite lyrics on it as well. Such a good album, really well produced as well. I'm not even sure who produced this album. Neil Young and Myro Bolars. Oh, yeah, okay. But it's really solid album. Very solid. Deserves to be here. And then the number one wasn't going to be much of a surprise to me. I knew as soon as I picked it that it was going to be up there in the top 2 or 3. And it's not that it's the greatest instrumental album of all time, or even that it gets a ton of airplay with me, which it gets its regular share, but it's just the energy level on this album is so high, such a high energy level with so many absolutely angry songs that get the knack by the knack. This is just proliferated with really catchy riffs, lots of poppy kind of power pop type tunes here. Let Me Out and Frustrated, those are two, they're the bookends of this album, and they're so similar. They both just high energy rock out, completely identifying songs. And then you got a few quirky songs like Your Number or Your Name, the Siamese Twins with The Monkey and Me. Those songs are kind of a little bit quirky. They're different, but I like both of them. And then you got your girl songs, I call them, O Tara. Of course, the big monster hit, My Sharona and Lucinda. All good tracks, no bad ones there. Then you got my favorite track, which is She's So Selfish. This is an absolutely, should have been a monster hit as well. Such a killer track. You know, the live version is a little bit nastier, but overall, such a great tune. Maybe Tonight, this is another song that did get some airplay, quite a bit of airplay at one point. And then they kind of did away with it. Doesn't get as much anymore. Then you have songs like That's What the Little Girls Do and Good Girls Don't. This is his kind of play on that kind of thing. And they did do another album with that similar type title on it. All good songs. And the only song on here that may be a bit on the weak side for me is Heartbeat. I'm not as big a fan of that tune as some of the other stuff, but overall, it's a strong album. The strong stuff really pulls up anything at the bottom. You know, She's So Selfish, My Sharona, Let Me Out, Frustrated, Your Number or Your Name, O Tara. These songs all pull this album right up to the top. This is a great album, I think. If you like that high energy kind of new wave-ish kind of poppy sound, you'll love this album. Anyways, that's it. So those are my 6 masterpiece albums that I'm adding to my masterpiece collection. Number 1, Get the Knack by the Knack. That's a 79 release as well. Neil Young's Freedom. I believe this was a 91 or 92 release. Might even been as late. It was 93, yeah. So it's a 93 release. So a little bit later in his career, but such a great album. Power Slave, the album right after Peace of Mind, which of course followed Number of the Beast. So only a few albums out that I was into this group. Strong album, lots of really good heavy stuff on here. Iron Maiden has 2 or 3 albums that are on the cusp of masterpiece. This was just the first one to get in. I'm sure next year I'll have another nomination for one of the other ones, and then we're going to end up with 3 or 4 for sure. Supertramp's Even in the Quietest Moments. Definitely maybe doesn't get quite the notoriety that Crime of the Century or Breakfast in America does, but it's definitely right in there with them. Peter Gabriel's Security, even the Shock the Monkey leading the way here. This is a fantastic album. San Jacinto, another fantastic tune, one of my favorites of all time. Number 5. And then the last one, of course, Blue Oyster Cult's Fire of Unknown Origin. This is maybe one of the best covers by Blue Oyster Cult as well. I love this part as well. Look at that. That's fantastic. All the tunes on this, solid to great. There's nothing but solid to great on this. So those are my 6. That's actually the most I've named in one season, 6. Last year I think it was 5. Year before probably 5 as well. I've never had more than 5 up until this year. A couple times. Initially when I first started doing this back when I was still young, I had almost my entire Kiss collection in there, and now there's just the 2. So there was times when I really started to get to a point where I wanted to make this consistent. I started pulling some albums out. There was maybe pulled out about 12 of them over a 4 or 5 year period, and about 8 of those were Kiss albums that I didn't really think deserved to be there. They didn't meet the criteria, and so well, at least the modern criteria. Now I could do it like they do at Cooperstown, where once you're in there, you're not coming out. There's just a couple of people in Cooperstown. There's one guy in Cooperstown, played 2 seasons in the majors and had 250 average and barely even played, but because he knew people, he got in. I'm not doing that kind of thing. So, if it doesn't deserve to be there, it doesn't deserve to be there. That's just the way it is. So there's still the 2 Kiss albums in there, but the other 8 are all pulled out. So, or the other 6, I guess it would be 6, because I think there was 8 initially. Anyways, that's just how it works with me. It's a fun thing for me to do. It also keeps me up to date on what stuff I love the most and bringing in new stuff. Next year is going to be a different one, Masterpiece, because a lot of the stuff that came in the first year of this channel will then become eligible. There's at least 3 or 4 albums that will become eligible, all of which have a really strong opportunity to become masterpieces at this present time. Now, sometimes albums fade with me and they don't quite get to where I thought they were going to be. But yep, so I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Masterpieces. We will be back next September with another list of masterpieces. Hopefully we'll have some good ones for you then too. So take care. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. And any comments about any of the albums or albums that you think are personally masterpieces for you, you can put those in the comment section too. That would be great. I love to hear what other people think, because other people's masterpieces may not be mine, but there may be 1 or 2 in there that, maybe I haven't heard before. I thought, if this guy thinks it's a masterpiece, it's got to be at least worth listening to, right? So anyways, hope you have a good day and take care and goodbye.